frost clung to my eyelashes like frozen tears, each breath a white plume vanishing into the dim hum of the cold storage unit, where the air tasted of iron and regret. Elias's calloused hands gripped my shoulders, pulling me closer in that sub-zero tomb buried deep in the Montana pines, his whisper cutting through the chill. "You think that ring makes you invisible to me?" And there, amid the hanging carcasses and the relentless drone of the compressors, I shattered, my wedding band glinting like an accusation as his lips found mine, warm and unforgiving. That moment in the cold storage marked the fracture in everything I had built, a life stitched together with quiet lies in the shadow of the Bitterroot Mountains. I was Cole Harlan, 32, a man who fixed trucks for ranchers in the dusty outskirts of Missoula, coming home each evening to Sarah's soft smile and the scent of her chamomile tea, our 2-year-old daughter, Lila, giggling from her high chair. We lived in a modest cabin on the edge of town, where the aspens turned gold in fall and the winters buried us under feet of snow, a picture of small-town stability that felt more like a cage with each passing year. Sarah and I had met in high school, married young because that's what you did in places like this, hold on to the familiar before the world could pull it away. But beneath the routine, the unspoken truth gnawed at me. I loved her as a partner, a mother to our child, but not in the way that set my blood on fire. Not like the way my gaze lingered too long on the rough-hewn men at the garage, their broad shoulders and easy laughs stirring something primal I had long learned to bury. Elias Rivera had blown into town like a rogue wind off the Rockies, 6 months back, taking the night shift at the old meatpacking plant 20 miles out, where the wilderness swallowed the road whole. He was 41, with skin the color of aged cedar from years under Texas suns before he fled north. His black hair cropped close and threaded with silver, eyes dark as the river at midnight. Divorced, no kids, he kept to himself, hauling quarters of elk and beef into the freezers that hummed like distant thunder. Folks in Missoula whispered about him. Too city for these parts, too quiet, with a tattoo of a coiled serpent peeking from his shirt cuff that hinted at stories he never told. I first saw him at the feed store, loading sacks of grain into his battered Ford, muscles flexing under a threadbare Henley, and something in my chest twisted, sharp as barbed wire. It started innocently enough, or so I told myself. A flat tire on my way home from a late oil change, rain sluicing down in sheets that turned the gravel to mud. Elias pulled up behind me, headlights cutting through the downpour, and without a word, he jacked up the truck, his rain-slicked shirt clinging to the ridges of his back. "You live out by the old Harlan place?" he asked, voice low and gravel rough, wiping mud from his hands on his jeans. I nodded, throat tight, and when he finished, he handed me a thermos of black coffee from his cab. "Keeps the cold out." His fingers brushed mine, deliberate or not, and in that touch, the dam cracked just a hair. From there, it was stolen moments at the edges of our lives. I drive out to the plant under the guise of delivering parts for their ancient delivery van, lingering in the loading bay where the air smelled of pine sap and diesel. Elias would emerge from the shadows, wiping sweat from his brow even in the chill, and we'd talk about the elk migration, the way the stars looked sharper out here than anywhere else, the ghosts we both carried from places we'd left behind. He spoke little of his ex-wife in Austin, only that she'd wanted kids he couldn't give, that the city had choked the air from his lungs. I shared fragments of my own cage, the weight of Sarah's expectations, the joy of Lila's tiny hand in mine, the suffocating normalcy that made me feel like a stranger in my skin. "You're holding on too tight, Cole," he'd say, leaning against the freezer door, his gaze steady. "What if letting go doesn't break everything?" One evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, painting the sky in bruised purples, I found myself at the plant after hours, the ring on my finger feeling heavier than the toolbox in my truck bed. Elias was inside, inventorying cuts under the harsh fluorescence, and when he saw me through the glass, he didn't smile, just nodded, like he'd been waiting. "Sarah thinks I'm at the bar with the guys," I muttered, stepping into the cold storage, the door sealing shut with a hiss that echoed my guilt. The space was vast, a cathedral of frost where sides of venison hung like silent sentinels, their breath long stolen by the sub-zero bite. He turned, wiping his hands on a rag, and crossed the distance in 3 strides, his presence filling the room like smoke. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. And when I reached for him, tentative palm flat against his chest where I felt the steady thrum of his heart, he didn't pull away. Instead, he cupped my jaw, thumb tracing the scar on my cheek from a childhood fall off the barn roof, and kissed me. It was slow at first, exploratory, the cold air sharpening every sensation. The scrape of his stubble, the faint salt of his skin, the way his body molded to mine as if we'd been carved from the same rough stone. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the world narrowed to that point of contact. The ring on my finger forgotten in the heat we generated against the chill. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together, the hum of the compressors our only witness. "This is dangerous," I whispered, but even as the words left my lips, I knew I was already lost. Elias's laugh was soft, bitter-edged. "All the best things are out here in the wild." And in that moment, deep in the cold storage where the wilderness pressed against the walls, he held me, arms wrapping around my waist, chin resting on my shoulder, as if he could shield me from the storm I was about to unleash on my own life. The weeks blurred into a fever dream of secrecy and stolen fire. I'd wake beside Sarah, her head on my chest, Lila's crib monitor glowing softly in the corner, and feel the phantom ache of Elias's touch, a bruise blooming under my skin. Mornings at the garage were torture, wrenching bolts while my mind replayed the curve of his hip under my palm, the way he'd grown my name like a prayer in the dim light of his trailer on the plant's edge. We met there when we could, nights when Sarah crashed early after Lila's bedtime stories, or afternoons when I'd claim a parts run to billings that never materialized. His place was sparse. A sagging couch, a wood stove crackling against the draft, posters of dusty Texas rodeos peeling from the walls. It smelled of him, leather and pine smoke, and in that cramped space, we unraveled each other with a hunger that bordered on violence. "You're married," he'd say sometimes, post-climax, tracing the band on my finger as we lay tangled in sheets that smelled of us. Not accusatory, but searching, like he was mapping the fault lines in my resolve. I'd pull him closer, burying my face in the crook of his neck, inhaling the musk that lingered even after the sweat cooled. "It doesn't change this," I'd murmur, and for a while it was true. We built a world in the margins. Hikes along the Blackfoot River where he'd point out eagle nests and I'd sketch crude maps on napkins, dreaming of a cabin farther north. Lazy Sundays in his truck bed, staring at clouds that shifted like unspoken promises. Elias opened me up, layer by layer, coaxing out the boy I'd suppressed, the one who loved poetry by firelight and the raw ache of a guitar strummed out of tune. He read me lines from Whitman at dawn, his voice weaving through the mist, and for the first time, I felt seen, not as the reliable husband or the steady provider, but as Cole, flawed and fierce. But the wilderness has a way of mirroring your shadows, and mine grew longer with each clandestine mile. Sarah noticed the distance first, the way I'd zone out during dinner, fork midway to my mouth, or how I'd linger in the shower, water scalding as if to wash away the scent of him. "Everything okay at work?" she'd ask, her blue eyes soft with that unwavering trust that twisted the knife deeper. I'd nod, force a smile, pull her into a hug that felt like apology. Lila's laughter was my anchor, her chubby fists clutching my shirt as I swung her high, but even that joy soured with the lie beneath it. Guilt coiled in my gut like barbed wire, tightening with every text from Elias. Plant after shift? Need to feel you. I delete them, heart pounding, then drive out anyway, the ring a cold weight against the steering wheel. One crisp October afternoon, as leaves crunched underfoot like brittle bones, Elias and I slipped away to a hidden meadow off the Forest Service Road, a spot he'd scouted during hunts. The air was sharp with the promise of snow, and we spread a wool blanket amid the wild grasses, shedding clothes until the chill raised gooseflesh on our skin. He entered me there under the open sky, slow and deliberate, his breath hot against my ear as he whispered fragments of Spanish from his abuela's lullabies, words of longing that bridged the miles between his past and this stolen now. I arched into him, nails digging into his back, the world dissolving into rhythm and release, the distant call of a loon the only sound beyond our gasps. Afterward, we lay spent, his head on my chest, fingers interlaced over the grass stains on my jeans. "What if we ran?" he murmured, tracing lazy circles on my sternum. "North to Alaska. Start over. You, me, no ghosts." The vision hit me like a gut punch. A cabin on the Yukon, Lila's laughter echoing off glaciers. Sarah. God, Sarah, left behind in the wreckage. I swallowed hard, the ring digging into my palm. "I can't leave them," I said finally, voice cracking. Elias stilled, then sat up, his expression a mask of quiet storm. "Then what are we doing, Cole?" "Playing house in the shadows." He dressed in silence, the space between us widening like a chasm, and when he drove me back to my truck, the kiss goodbye was perfunctory, lips brushing cheek instead of mouth. That night, Sarah made meatloaf, her mother's recipe, comfort food for the fraying edges of us. Lila smeared gravy on her tray, babbling about Dada's big truck, and I watched them, chest hollow as a rotted log. Sarah reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "You've been so far away lately. Talk to me." The words lodged in my throat, a confession too vast for the lamplight flicker. Instead, I lied again, just tired. "Long week." She nodded, believing because she loved me, and I excused myself early, claiming a headache, retreating to the porch where the stars wheeled cold and indifferent overhead. The next day at the garage, grease under my nails and the radio crooning Johnny Cash laments, my phone buzzed. A photo from Elias. Him shirtless in the cold storage, frost-kissed skin glowing under the lights, caption "Thinking of you" in the freeze. Heat flooded me, but so did dread, the lines blurring irreversibly. I forwarded parts orders to cover another run, met him at the trailer, and we collided like thunderheads, fierce, consuming, his hands pinning my wrists as he took me against the wall, the serpent tattoo flexing like a warning. "Tell me you want this," he growled, eyes locked on mine, and I did, over and over, until my voice broke on his name. But as November's grip tightened, frost etching the cabin windows like accusations, the cracks spread. Sarah found a receipt in my jacket pocket, for gas to a station near the plant, time-stamped on a night I'd said I was fishing. "Cole?" Her voice was small over breakfast, receipt trembling in her hand. I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips, Lila oblivious as she stacked blocks. "It's nothing," I stammered, the lie tasting like ash. "Client pickup." She searched my face, hurt flickering like a shorted wire, then folded the paper away. "Okay." But the trust dimmed, a light going out, and I drove to work with tears blurring the road, the weight of two worlds crushing my ribs. Elias sensed the shift that evening, when I arrived late, hollow-eyed. We sat on his couch, beers sweating in our hands, the wood stove popping embers into the dark. "She's on to you?" I admitted finally, staring into the flames. He set his bottle down, arm draping my shoulders. "Then tell her. Rip the bandage." His touch was gentle now, thumb stroking my neck, but the words landed like stones in still water. "I can't hurt her like that, Lila." Elias pulled back, jaw tight. "And what about us? What about me, Cole? Am I just the itch you scratch when the wife's asleep?" The accusation hung heavy, and I recoiled as if slapped. "No, God, no. You're everything," I wanted to say, but the ring stopped me, a silver muzzle. We argued then, voices rising over the wind rattling the trailer, old wounds surfacing. His fear of being the other man again, my terror of appending the only family I'd known. He stormed out into the night, leaving me alone with the dying fire, the serpent on the wall watching like a judge. Days bled into a frigid standoff. I'd see his truck at the plant from afar, a ghost in the lot, but our paths didn't cross. Sarah withdrew too, her touches fleeting, conversations clipped, the house echoing with unspoken fractures. Lila's fevers kept me home one weekend, cuddling her through nightmares, Sarah hovering with cool cloths, and in those tender hours, guilt warred with longing, a civil war in my veins. Was this love with Elias, or just escape? The question looped, endless as the mountain winds. Then came the storm, a nor'easter barreling down from Canada, dumping 2 feet overnight, sealing roads in white silence. Power flickered, then died. The cabin plunged into candlelit gloom. Sarah and I huddled by the hearth, Lila asleep between us, and in the quiet, she broke. I know there's someone, Cole. Just tell me it's not what I think. Her voice was raw, tears carving tracks down her cheeks. The dam burst then. I confessed it all, haltingly, the words tumbling like avalanche. The confusion since high school, the marriage as anchor against the tide, Elias as the truth I'd denied. She listened, hand over mouth, then stood, wrapping arms around herself. I thought we were enough. We cried together until dawn, the storm raging outside, and by morning, she'd packed a bag for her sisters in Bozeman. I need space. For Lila. For me. She left with our daughter, the door clicking shut like finality, and I collapsed on the porch, snow soaking through my jeans, the emptiness howling louder than the gale. I drove to the plant through drifts, the world a blank slate, desperate for Elias. The cold storage door yawned open, generators rumbling, and there he was, shoveling ice from the loading dock, breath clouding like fury. Sarah knows, I said, voice lost in the wind. He paused, shovel midair, then dropped it, pulling me inside where the freeze bit deep. Everything. I nodded, and he held me there, against the wall amid the hanging meat, his body a bulwark against the cold. But when I kissed him, seeking solace, he turned his head. This isn't how it ends, Cole. Not with you running to me broken. His words were a blade, twisting. You have to choose for real, or we're poison. The rejection stung worse than the frost, and I left him there, driving blind through the whiteout, crashing into a ditch 5 miles out. Rescued by a plow driver, I spent the night in a Missoula motel, staring at the ring I'd twisted off and left on the nightstand, a talisman of the man I was shedding. Days turned to weeks of limbo, Sarah's texts polite but distant, Lila's photos a knife twist, Elias's silence a void. I threw myself into work, rebuilding engines as if I could reassemble my life. But nights brought dreams of the cold storage, Elias's arms my only warmth. Healing came in fragments like spring thaw. I started therapy in town with Dr. Lena Voss, a no-nonsense woman with a German accent and eyes that saw through bullshit. You're not broken, Cole, she'd say over herbal tea in her cluttered office. You're awakening, but awakening hurts. I journaled by the cabin fire. Pages of doubt, desire. The boy who'd hidden behind flannel and silence. Letters to Sarah, unsent, poured out apologies and truths. Voicemails to Elias, deleted, begging for time. The wilderness helped too. Solitary hikes up Grizzly Peak, where the air thinned and perspectives shifted, pines whispering forgiveness. Sarah returned in March, Lila toddling ahead with a dandelion chain, her own therapy bag packed with revelations. We talked for hours on the porch swing, rocking gently as dusk fell. I love you, Cole, as my best friend, Lila's dad. But not like that, not anymore. Divorce papers followed, amicable, custody shared, her moving to a rental in town for stability. The finality freed something in me, a bird uncaged, though grief lingered like wood smoke. Emboldened, I sought Elias at the plant, heart hammering as I entered the cold storage under midday sun. He was there, cataloging hides, turning with surprise that softened to wariness. I left her, I said simply, stepping close, the ring absent from my finger. Chose myself. Chose us, if you'll have me. He searched my eyes, the scar on my cheek catching the light, then smiled, slow and real, pulling me into an embrace that thawed the last of winter's grip. Took you long enough, Harlan. We built from there, tentative at first. Dinners at the diner where locals raised eyebrows but minded their plates. Weekends with Lila, who took to Elias's gentle storytelling like a duck to water, calling him Uncle Eli with gummy grins. He moved into the cabin come summer, his Texas boots by the door mingling with my work gloves, our lives weaving like vines up the trellis. Nights in the cold storage became legend, a private mythology we revisited on anniversaries. Bodies entwined where it began, the wilderness now ally instead of adversary. In the end, it wasn't perfection. No tidy bows on messy hearts, but a profound humanity. The grace in choosing truth over comfort, love in its raw, unvarnished forms. Elias taught me that holding on can freeze you solid, but letting go, even into the deep wild, leads to warmer shores. And as we stood on the porch one autumn eve, his arm around my waist, Lila chasing fireflies in the yard, Sarah waving from her car after drop-off, I knew we'd forged something enduring. Not in spite of the fractures, but because of them. The first true test came not in the quiet rebuilds, but in the undercurrents of small-town scrutiny that simmered like a pot left too long on the stove. Missoula wasn't San Francisco. Whispers traveled faster than the Clark Fork in spring flood, and our story, the mechanic and the outsider, the divorce fresh as yesterday's snow, became fodder for gas station gossip and church pew murmurs. Old man Hargrove at the feed store clapped me on the back one morning, his grip a shade too tight. Heard you and Sarah called it quits. Tough break, son. That Rivera fella keeping you company now. His eyes twinkled with false concern, and I mumbled something about minding my own, wrenching the conversation back to carburetors. But the barbs stuck, invisible hooks in my hide. Elias took it in stride, his Texas drawl thickening when riled. A shield of wry humor deflecting the stares at the Saturday market where we'd push a cart for Lila's favorites. Huckleberry jam and fresh cornbread. Let 'em talk, he'd say, tossing a braid of garlic into the basket, his hand brushing mine deliberate in the crowd. Means we're real enough to notice. Yet I saw the toll in private, the way he'd tense when a ranch hand lingered too long at the plant, appraising him like fresh stock, or how he'd wake from dreams murmuring his ex's name, the serpent tattoo a reminder of bites past. You ever worry I'll wake up and bolt? He'd ask on quiet nights, our legs tangled under the quilts, the cabin's beams creaking like old bones. I'd trace the ink on his forearm, feeling the raised edges like Braille secrets. Only if you start craving salsa hotter than this Montana air. We'd laugh, but underneath lurked my own specters. The fear that this happiness was borrowed, that one wrong move would summon the lawman of regret. Therapy with Dr. Voss dug deeper now, unearthing the roots. My father's stoic silences after his mill accident, the Bible studies' veiled warnings about unnatural affections, the high school coach who'd looked away when locker room taunts turned physical. You're grieving the boy you buried, she'd say, her notebook filling with my scrawls. But look at the man emerging. He's worth the dirt. Lila bridged the gaps effortlessly, her toddler chaos a bomb. She'd climb Elias like a jungle gym, demanding horsey rides that left him winded and grinning, his broad frame folding into play with a tenderness that melted me. Sarah navigated it all with grace born of her own healing. Weekly coffees where we'd swap stories, her new job at the library opening doors to book clubs and tentative dates. He's good with her, she'd say of Elias, sipping chamomile, the old familiarity settling like dust after a wind. No bitterness, just a shared relief that we'd salvaged family from the ruins, co-parenting a village for our girl. Yet the wilderness, ever the mirror, reflected back our vulnerabilities in sharper relief. Come July, a heat wave scorched the valleys, turning the Blackfoot to a trickle and igniting spot fires in the dry underbrush. Elias's shifts at the plant stretched long, the cold storage a ironic refuge from the blaze, and I'd pace the cabin, radio crackling with evacuation warnings. One evening, as thunderheads massed like bruises, I drove out unannounced, the air thick with ash. He was in the trailer, shirtless and soot-streaked from a midday brush clear, and the sight of him, vulnerable, real, ignited something fierce. We made love on the sagging couch, urgent and unhurried, his hands mapping my body like territory reclaimed, whispers of forever mingling with the distant siren wail. After, as sweat cooled and the storm broke in sheets, he propped on an elbow, eyes serious. I want to build something permanent, Cole. Not just this. He gestured to the trailer, the plant's floodlights piercing the rain. A place of our own deeper in, away from eyes. The idea bloomed: land in the Swan Valley, a fixer-upper cabin with views of glacial peaks, space for Lila's swing set and Elias's woodworking bench. We pored over listings that week, dreams sketched on napkins amid Lila's crayon scribbles. The ring's absence no longer a void but an invitation. But dreams draw shadows, and ours manifested in Harlan blood. My brother, Jake, rolled into town uninvited. Fresh from his oil rig stint in Williston, broad as a bull and twice as stubborn, towing his fifth wheel like a conqueror. He'd heard the news from Dad, who still holed up in the family spread near Hamilton, arthritis gnarling his hands as much as his prejudices. Jake cornered me at the garage, oil drum between us, his face flushed under the ball cap. "What the hell's this, Cole? Shacking up with some spick drifter?" Moma'd roll in her grave. The slur landed like a sucker punch, and I swung without thinking, fist connecting with his jaw, sending him staggering into the parts rack. Tools clattered, customers froze, and Jake lunged back, but I held ground, chest heaving. "Get out, and don't come back till you learn some respect." He left with a split lip and a glare that promised grudges, but the fight unearthed old fault lines. That night, Elias found me on the porch, knuckles bruised, staring at the dark woods. "Family's a bitch," he said, settling beside me with 2 fingers of bourbon. I leaned into him, the warmth seeping through. "Jake's just Dad's echo, scared of anything that don't fit the script." We talked till stars pricked the canopy. His own brother's disownment after the divorce, the letters burned unsent. And in the sharing, the weight lightened, bonds forging stronger in the fire. Summer waned with harvest fairs and fading light. Lila's 3rd birthday, a riot of cake and balloons where Sarah and Elias traded stories over punch, the circle closing gentle. We closed on the Swan land in September, a ramshackle A-frame with a creek burbling past, and moved in fits and starts. Truckloads of Elias's tools, my garage odds and ends, Lila's toys scattering like confetti. The first night, under a roof patched but sturdy, we christened the space on a mattress amid paint cans, laughter bubbling as floorboards groaned, the wilderness humming approval outside. Yet peace is fleeting in these parts, and autumn brought a reckoning from the past. Elias's ex, Maria, surfaced via email, polite at first, inquiring after mutual friends, then probing. "Heard you're with someone new. Be careful, he runs when it gets real." Doubt wormed in, a sliver under the nail, and I confronted him over stew one rainy eve, the cabin fogged with steam. "She says you left her high and dry." His spoon clattered, face paling. Lies to salve her pride. I stayed till the end, Cole, through the miscarriages, the blame. She wanted a ghost. I couldn't be it. Tears tracked his cheeks, raw and rare, and I held him through the storm. Apologies murmured into his hair. Trust rebuilt brick by brick in the vulnerability. As leaves turned crimson, we hiked the property line, Lila on Elias's shoulders, pointing at deer tracks. "This is home," he said, arms slung over my neck, and I believed it. Deep in the wilderness where we'd first cracked open, now rooting firm, the cold storage faded to memory, a birthplace not a prison, and in its echo we held each other, rings exchanged in quiet ceremony by the creek. Simple bands of hammered silver, vows whispered to the current. No fanfare, just us, the girl, the wild. A family forged in frost and fire, human in its beautiful imperfection. Winter crept back like an old lover, unannounced and unrelenting, blanketing the Swan Valley in hush-white isolation that amplified every creak and sigh. The cabin, our fragile fortress, stood resilient against the gales, wood stove glowing like a heartbeat, but the seclusion bred introspection, shadows lengthening in the long nights. Elias thrived in it, chopping cordwood at dawn, his axe bites rhythmic as a pulse, steam rising from his bare torso despite the bite, while I wrestled the quiet, garage shifts in Missoula feeling like intrusions on our bubble. Lila adapted with glee, her world shrinking to snow forts and cocoa mugs, but her questions sharpened. "Where's Mommy tonight?" Or, "Why Uncle Eli sleep in Dada's bed?" We'd field them gently, stories of big love encompassing all. Her trust a mirror for our own fragile mending. The plant called Elias less as holiday orders surged, his expertise traded for seasonal consulting, leaving days free for cabin projects. Shelves hewn from reclaimed barn beams, a loft play space for Lila's dolls. I'd join after work, hands blistered on hammers, the labor a therapy of its own. Building tangible where emotions swirled abstract. One twilight, as we stained the porch rails, he paused, paintbrush dripping umber. Remember that first night in the cold storage? Thought I'd freeze solid waiting for you to thaw. His grin crinkled the corners of his eyes, and I set my brush aside, pulling him close, the scent of varnish mingling with his earthiness. You melted me, all right? Still do. Intimacy deepened in the confines, no longer frantic but exploratory, bodies mapping scars and sighs by lantern light. He'd wake me with coffee and kisses trailing south, his mouth a slow burn that left me arching into dawn's pale glow. I'd return the favor in the tub, soapy hands kneading tension from his shoulders, water sloshing as whispers turned to moans. It was reverence now, each touch a affirmation of choice, the ring on my finger, no longer solitary. A tether to this man who'd seen my fractures and stayed. But the valley's remoteness, while sanctuary, isolated us from lifelines. A blizzard hit mid-January, fiercer than the last, stranding us for days with dwindling stores. Power failed, generators sputtering on fumes, and cabin fever set in. Lila's tantrums echoing off walls, Elias's patience fraying as he paced like a caged wolf. We need a plan B, he growled over canned beans by candlelight, shadows dancing grotesque. I nodded, guilt flickering. This was my dream pushed, his life uprooted for it. The thaw brought clarity and action. A satellite phone installed, emergency kit stocked, bi-weekly town runs ritualized. In the mending we grew, vulnerabilities aired like laundry on the line. Sarah's visit sustained us, her car crunching up the drive bi-weekly, Lila's squeals bridging the miles. She'd linger for meals now, our talks evolving. Her budding romance with a librarian named Theo, gentle and bookish, sparking envy-tinged pride in me. He's good for her, Elias murmured post-departure, washing dishes while I dried. Like you're good for me. Simple words, profound anchor, reminding that love's forms multiply, not diminish. Yet external winds stirred again, this time from Elias's past crashing shores. A letter arrived in February, postmarked Austin, Maria, unfiltered now. He's telling you half-truths. Left me for a bar fling, ran north to hide. Don't let him ghost you too. Enclosed, a faded photo. Young Elias, arm around her at a rodeo, smiles bright but eyes distant. Doubt flooded, cold as the creek under ice. And I confronted him on a hike, snowshoes sinking deep, Lila napping in the carrier on my back. She says you cheated. Bolted. He stopped, breath clouding, face ashen. I didn't bolt, Cole. Stayed through hell, the losses, the fights. The fling? Once drunk, regret. I confessed. She couldn't forgive. His voice cracked, hands fisting gloves. Came north to breathe, not hide. Met you by accident or fate. Tears froze on his lashes, and I pulled him down, foreheads touching in the drift. I believe you. Us. The admission healed a rift I hadn't named. Trust reforged in the white expanse. Spring unfurled tentative, mud season sucking at boots, wildflowers punching through snowbanks like defiant fists. We planted a garden, rows of carrots and kale, Elias's hands gentle in soil, his abuela's recipes promising summer bounty. Lila helped, mud-caked and gleeful, her laughter the valley's thaw song. Community crept in too. A neighbor, old-timer Walt, dropping venison stew with gruff invites to poker nights. The Missoula Queer Alliance, tentative outreach via Sarah, hosting potlucks where we mingled shy, stories swapped like kindling. But summer's heat unearthed deeper strata. Jake reappeared, sober and sheepish, pulling up in his rig during a Lila weekend. Apologies scrawled on a napkin from some Dakota dive. I was wrong. Bro Dad's poisons mine too long. We fished the creek, lines casting silent, words halting at first. His own hidden pains, a failed engagement masking his bisexuality, buried under roughneck bravado. Elias joined at dusk, cooler of beers in hand, and tentative truce formed. Handshakes evolving to hugs, Jake bouncing Lila on knee with awkward charm. Forgiveness isn't erasure, but it carves space, and in that, family redefined. August brought crisis anew, not fracture, but forge. Elias collapsed at a town fair, heatstroke felling him mid-cotton candy line, Lila wailing as I rushed him to ER. Tests revealed arrhythmia, vestige of untreated stress from Texas years, and the valley's remoteness loomed threat. "Can't lose you," I whispered in the sterile room, his hand pale in mine, monitors beeping steady. He squeezed back, "Right. Not planning to, cowboy." Surgery followed in Missoula, pacemaker implant, a tick in his chest like clockwork renewed, and recovery chained us. Me shuttling work and care, Sarah stepping in for Lila nights, the community rallying with meals and check-ins. In convalescence, by the cabin's hearth, Elias vulnerable in flannel and sweats, we peeled back final layers. "Scared me straight," he admitted, head in my lap as I carted fingers through his hair. "Life's short, love fierce, vows renewed, rings kissed, and intimacy shifted, slower, savoring. His body healing under my touch like earth after rain. Lila drew get well cards, stick figures of us three under rainbows, her innocence the purest medicine. Fall gilded the aspens once more, harvest yielding crooked carrots but hearts full. We hosted Thanksgiving, Sarah and Theo, Jake with his new girlfriend from Billings, Walt and his widow. Tables groaning under turkey and tamales, laughter drowning old ghosts. As snow dusted peaks, Elias and I slipped to the cold storage one last time, not for passion's blaze but memory's embrace. Standing amid the frost, hands clasped, whispering gratitudes for the wild path that led here. Deep in the wilderness, he held me still, ring shared, not solitary, and in that chill warmth eternal. The pacemaker's tick became our unspoken metronome, pacing not just Elias's heart, but the rhythm of our days. A reminder that fragility threads through even the sturdiest lives. Fall deepened into a mosaic of amber and rust, the valley's colors a fleeting gift before winter's monochrome claim, and we savored it with deliberate steps. Apple picking at the old orchard near Sealy Lake, Lila's cheeks smeared with juice as she rode Elias's shoulders, her giggles echoing off the hills like bells. "Faster, horsey!" she'd command, and he'd oblige, feigning winded huffs that dissolved into shared laughter. My camera capturing the tableau, man, child, mountain, a portrait of mended holes. Sarah's integration flowered too, her relationship with Theo solidifying into weekend overnights at our place. Storytime duets where his baritone wove with Elias's gravel, Lila entranced between them. Jealousy, once a specter, now amused me. Theo's dry wit clashing with Elias's stories of Texas dust devils, the four of us orbiting Lila's sun. "You're lucky," Sarah confided one cider-fueled evening on the porch, stars pricking the velvet sky. "Found your truth without shattering everything." Her words, absolution wrapped in envy, sealed our evolution from spouses to allies. Divorce a door not slammed but eased open to broader light. Yet the seasons turn unearthed subtler tremors. Elias's recovery, though swift, left echoes. An aversion to crowds that turned the annual harvest dance into a porch vigil. Him nursing a flask while I twirled Lila under strings of lights. "Too many eyes," he'd mutter, gaze distant, and I'd pull him inside, bodies aligning in the kitchen's warmth. Slow dances to radio static where words weren't needed. Intimacy adapted, his energy flagging some nights led to tender explorations. My lips charting the fresh scar below his collarbone, his fingers eliciting shivers that spoke volumes. "You're my steady," he'd breathe, and in those murmurs security bloomed. Community tendrils strengthened, weaving us tighter. Walt's poker nights evolved into bonfire gatherings, his cronies, grizzled vets and loggers, thawing to Elias's card-sharp bluffs and my quiet deals. Tall tales of lost hunts and phantom grizzlies circling the flames. Jake became fixture, his rig parked for weeks at a stretch, helping with cabin expansions. A bunk room for Lila's sleepovers, a workshop where he and Elias bonded over lathes and lore, Oil roughneck meeting meatpacker in shared sweat. Never thought I'd say it, Jake admitted over whiskey's one dusk. Valley mist rising like breath. But you're good for him, Eli. For all of us. The concession? Hard won. Bridged brotherly chasms. Dad's shadow receding further. Winter's prelude tested resolve anew. A wolf pack prowled the valley's edge. Tracks circling our chicken coop. Eyes glinting in moonlit forays that left Elias pacing with rifle at ready. Protecting our own, he'd say, voice edged. The pacemakers hum a counterpoint to primal vigilance. We'd reinforce fences by headlamp, breaths sinking in the cold, and in the adrenaline's wake, passion flared, against the barn wall, frost nipping exposed skin. His growl low as I yielded, the wild's pulse mirroring ours. Lila, oblivious, named the woofies from her window perch. Fear transmuted to fable. Holiday lights twinkled in early December, our first as full unit, and we decked the cabin. Pine boughs swagged with ribbons, Lila's handprints in dough ornaments dangling from beams. Sarah and Theo joined for cookie-baking marathons, flower dustings like snow, while Jake hauled in a 10-footer from the National Forest. It sent evergreen promise. Christmas Eve, fire roaring, we exchanged gifts modest but meaningful. Elias's hand-carved box for my tools, my leather-bound journal for his sketches, Lila's finger-painted family tree, encompassing all. As carols crackled on the radio, arms entwined on the rug, the moment crystallized. Not perfection, but presence, love's quiet miracle. But January's grip clenched tighter, isolation breeding introspection's sharper edge. Elias withdrew into silences, staring out at the drifts as if reading runes in the white. What's eating you? I pressed one blizzard-bound afternoon. Lila napping upstairs, the cabin a cocoon of wool and warmth. He rubbed his chest, scar-itching phantom. Dreams again. The plant. The cold. Feels like I'm still frozen there, waiting. Vulnerability cracked his armor, and we delved deep. Sessions with Dr. Voss via video, unearthing his divorce's buried grief. The miscarriages not just hers but his unspoken mourning. Felt like failing her. Failing me? He confessed, tears salting his beard. I held space, hands cradling his face. Our shared therapy a bridge over chasms. Renewal stirred in February's Chinook winds. Thaws melting resolves rhyme. We skied the backcountry trails, skins whispering over powder. Lila bundled in a sled-towed tandem. Her whoops the trail's anthem. Atop a ridge, valley sprawling below like a rumpled quilt. Elias turned to me, mittened hand in mine. This us. It's the thaw I never knew I needed. The kiss, wind-whipped and fierce, sealed it. Rings glinting in sun-dappled light. Spring's surge brought expansion. Garden resurrection, seeds punched into warming soil, and a surprise. Sarah's announcement over brunch, belly gently rounding with Theo's child. Joy cascaded, Lila patting the bump with awe, our family fractalizing further. Auntie Lila, she declared, and we toasted to multiplicities, love's branches ever-reaching. Yet summer solstice shadowed with echo. Maria arrived unheralded, rental car crunching gravel, her presence a specter in sundress and resolve. Need closure, she said on the porch, Elias rigid beside me. Lila whisked inside by Sarah, words spilled. Apologies traded, truths aired without barbs. And in the raw exchange, absolution flowered. She left lighter, hug lingering on Elias's shoulder, and he turned to me, eyes clear. Ghosts don't haunt if you face them. As harvest moons waxed, we reaped abundances. Bumper crops sauced into jars. Lila's first school days met with tearful pride. Jake's engagement news sparking cabin toasts. The cold storage visit became annual rite, not haunt but homage. Standing in frost's embrace, bodies close, affirming the hold that began it all. Deep in the wilderness, he held me still. Our story etched in scars and stars, a testament to love's enduring, human weave. Autumn's palette deepened into velvet crimsons and golds, the valley a canvas of fleeting splendor that mirrored the subtle shifts in our tapestry. Threads pulling taut, colors bleeding into new hues. Lila's preschool plunge thrust us into rhythms of lunchbox packings and parent-teacher mixers. Her backpack slung like a badge of independence. Finger paints home in smudged glory. Elias volunteered for story hours, his baritone lulling tots with tales of coyote tricksters, while I navigated the gauntlet of playground politics, Sarah and Theo's new babe, little Owen, gurgling in a carrier as we swapped survival tips over coffee. The betrayal's ghost, long exorcised, resurfaced not in malice but memories tied. Jake's wedding loomed in October, a Bozeman affair blending his rough edges with bride Tessa's librarian poise, and invitations extended broad, Dad included. His RSVP a terse card that hung like storm cloud. "He wants to meet you proper," Jake confided over fence-mending beers. Hammer pauses heavy. "Says he's trying." Elias nodded, jaw set. "I'll go if Cole does." The decision weighed, a stone in my gut, but growth demands confrontation. So we drove east, cabin lights dimmed behind, Lila with Sarah for the weekend. The ceremony unfolded in a hayloft barn. Twinkle lights warding autumn chill, vows earnest amid laughter and line dance stomps. Dad lurked at periphery, his once broad frame shrunken by years and regrets, eyes avoiding mine until the reception's slow circle. He approached with a tumbler of bourbon, extended hand trembling. "Heard about everything." Jake filled gaps. Pause, swallow. "Proud of you, son." Took guts. The words, gravel rough, cracked something ancient, and Elias at my side, hands subtle on my back, lent steel. "This is Elias," I said, and Dad nodded, grip firm on the offered palm. "Welcome to the madhouse, son." No effusions, but the olive branch held, roots tentatively mending. Post-wedding glow faded into winter's prelude, November's frosts etching windows like lace warnings. Elias's health stabilized, checkups routine as oil changes, but dreams persisted, cold storage specters morphing to family phantoms, his abuela's voice chiding from grave. We combed them in therapy's nest, Dr. Voss's prompts unspooling yarns of abandonment. Father's mill death young, mother's remarriage swift, leaving him adrift in Texas sprawl. "You anchor me now," he told me after a session, driving home through flurries, hand on my thigh. The touch grounded, and that night, in bed's sanctuary, we explored anew. His body arching under mine, gasps charting release from chains unseen. Lila's holiday pageants demanded encores. Turkey trots at school, her elf costume a riot of tinsel, Elias and I alternating bleacher seats with Sarah and Theo, Owen's coos harmonizing the chaos. Family photos ensued. Expansive now, Jake and Tessa framing the frame, Dad's chair pulled close, his smile tentative but present. The cabin brimmed Yuletide. Stockings stitched by Elias's steady hands, Lila's reindeer games turning rugs to obstacle wilds. New Year's Eve, as fireworks popped distant over the divide, we slipped to the creek, frozen ribbon under stars, toasts with thermos flasks. "To us, unfrozen?" Elias murmured, lips cold then warm on mine, rings clinking like chimes. January's deep freeze tested infrastructures literal and lit. Pipes burst in the night, water geysering till valves seized, and we mopped by lantern, curses mingling with mirth. Lila's "Oh," the chorus. Repairs bonded, Jake hauling in for the fix, his banter lightening labor. But crisis crested when Elias spiked a fever, pacemaker site inflamed, valley roads iced shut. I shoveled a path to the truck, chains rattling, Missoula-era white-knuckle haul through wideout. "Infection?" docs pronounced, IVs dripping antibiotics, and I camped bedside, thumbing through Lila's drawings like talismans. He rallied slow, humor his lance. "Told you I was high maintenance." Discharge brought homebound vigilance. Broth simmered, stories read aloud. Intimacy paused for healing's sake but deepened in care's currency. Recovery's grace period bloomed revelations. Elias, Abed with books, penned letters to Maria. Closure missives airmailed south, bridges not burned but buttressed. Her reply, weeks later, was balm. "Forgive myself too. Wishing you frost-free days." The exchange liberated, his shoulders easing, and we celebrated with a spring equinox fire. Valley greening tentative, Lila dancing sparks with stick wand. Summer's symphony swelled. Garden bounty overflowing jars, Lila's swim lessons in the creek shallows, her splashes sinking with Owen's belly laughs during joint barbecues. Theo's lullabies joined Elias's, a duet for the babes, while Jake's visits turned tutorial. Fishing derbies where Dad tagged along, fly rods whipping arcs of forgiveness. Never too late, he grunted one dawn. Line taut with trout, and I nodded, the river's rush washing old sediments. Yet August's dog days dredged undercurrents. A Forest Service notice arrived. Timber harvest proposed adjacent our land. Chainsaws threatening the quiet we'd claimed. Elias rallied neighbors. Town hall meetings electric with pleas. His voice steady in the fray. This isn't just trees. It's home. I stood beside, hand in his under table, pride swelling as petitions mounted. The bid stalled by public outcry. Victory small but seismic, affirming our stake in the soil. Fall's harvest moon heralded harvest of souls too. Dad's health faltered, heart murmur echoing Elias's. Hospital stays in Hamilton bridging our worlds. We visited Tandem, Lila's drawings bedside cheer, and in sterile waits, stories surfaced. Dad's own suppressed affections, a college crush buried under duty's yoke. Regrets the real cold, he rasped, hand in Elias's. Don't let it freeze you. The confession, deathbed gift, thawed legacies. His passing in November a quiet exit, funeral uniting us in grief's garden. Jake's eulogy weaving loss with love's persistence. Winter wrapped gentle then, snows soft as Elias's recovering breaths. We skied by moonlight, trails silvered, Lila's sled whooshes trailing laughter. Intimacy reignited full. His body strong again, mine yielding in the loft, valleys hush our symphony. The cold storage pilgrimage, annual now, evolved. Not just hold, but vow renewal, frost witnesses to rings kissed, promises etched eternal. Deep in the wilderness, he held me. Through betrayals past, crises crested, healing's hard won. A love human, hence holy, its warmth defying every chill. Winter's veil thinned into March's tentative tease, icicles dripping like melting reservations. The valley stirring with saprise and bird choruses that heralded renewal's right. Lila's kindergarten orientation loomed, her backpack trials a comedy of spills and seriousness. Elias braiding wildflowers into her hair for the big day photo op, my brave explorer. He whispered, kneeling to her level, and she beamed, gap-toothed, hugging us both in a tangle of limbs and love. Sarah captured it, Owen on hip, Theo's arm around her waist. The tableau a testament to branches intertwined, roots communal. Elias's memoiring deepened, journal pages filling with vignettes. Texas boyhoods under mesquite skies, cold storage solitudes broken by my arrival, our cabin's hearth as haven. Writing it keeps it real, he'd say, pen scratching by stovelight, and I'd read drafts aloud, his head on my shoulder, edits murmured like endearments. Publishing whispers tempted. A Missoula Press scout at a reading series, cards exchanged over IPAs, but he demurred, this life's the story now. Still, the act unearthed joys. Abuela recipes revived, tamales steaming for potlucks, neighbors crowding our porch with pie plates and praise. Communities we've tightened, threads of alliance forming quilt strong. The queer group expanded to valley outposts, bonfires where stories sparked like embers. Farmers outing late, artists fleeing cities, elders sharing sepia secrets. Elias facilitated, his ease drawing shy souls, while I handled logistics, coolers stocked and chairs circled. Jake dove in, Tessa's support stealing his bisexuality's reveal. Their engagement party a barn burner of toasts and two-steps. Dad's photo presiding like blessing. Spring's flush brought fecundity's flood. Sarah's second, a girl named Iris, arrived in April's bloom, hospital room awash in lilacs and our collective awe. Lila anti-in-training with burp cloths at ready. Elias cooed soft Spanish nonsense. His tenderness a bridge to his own unfathered dreams. And I watched, heart full, the family fractal ever expanding. Enough room for all, Sarah quipped, cradling her newborn. And we nodded, love's abundance infinite. Yet May's greening masked microtremors. Elias's pacemaker check revealed minor drift, a calibration tweak that spiked his anxiety, nights restless with what-ifs. What if it fails? He'd murmur, chest pressed to mine in dark, and I'd soothe with truths. It won't. You're here whole. Therapy tandem, Dr. Voss's virtual hearth, unpacked the fear, mortality's shadow-lengthening post-dad's echo, and we countered with vitality's vows. Tandem bikes along the creek trail, Lila pedaling trike ahead, wind whipping freedoms. Summer's zenith scorched gentle, wildfire's distant threats quelled by rains. Our garden a jungle of triumphs. Zucchini boats grilled, berries jammed with Lila's help that painted more faces than jars. Vacations beckoned. A week in Glacier, tent pitched by Going to the Sun Road, stars wheeling over midnight hikes. Elias's guitar strums lulling Lila to dreams. Intimacy wildered there. Lake dips at dawn, bodies slick and urgent on dew-kissed tarps, the park's vastness amplifying whispers to roars. Fall's cusp crested with crossroads. The press pressed again, offering a chapbook deal for Elias's pieces, and he wavered, vulnerability raw. What if they hate it? Hate me? I cupped his face, scar-thumbed. They'll see you, like I do. Submission sent, acceptance swift. Readings scheduled in Missoula cafes where crowds gathered. His voice steadying through nerves, applause a bomb. Book launch at the cabin, valley folks spilling onto lawn. Lila hawking copies with crayon autographs. Triumph tasted like huckleberry pie, sweet and shared. November's hush harbored healing's harvest. Jake and Tessa's babe, a boy dubbed River, arrived premature but fierce. NICU vigils uniting us in Bozeman waits. Tiny fists our anchors. Elias held vigil too, his own paternal pangs surfacing soft, and we talked adoption's whispers. Perhaps someday expanding our circle further. No rush, he said, River swaddled post-discharge. But yeah, family's verb, not noun. Winter's return was ritual now. Snows embraced as old friends. Holiday circuits looped. Cabin feasts with Sarah's crew, Jake's raucous spreads, Walt's quiet suppers. New Year's resolution. A Valley Land trust push, Elias's pen rallying signatures. Our plot secured in perpetuity. The cold storage rite, snow-deep drive, culminated in ceremony. Vows etched on frost-fogged glass, bodies warming the chill, his hold fierce. Even then, always. Crisis cameoed in January's Fong. A nor'easter stranding Jake's rig near our drive, Tessa and babe in tow. Cabin quarters cramped but cozy. Power blinked, stories spun by lantern. And in the huddle, bonds burnished. Jake's coming out full, Tessa's allyship fierce. Our example lantern lit. Dawn broke clear, plows clearing paths, but the night forged indelible. Family not blood but choice, wilderness witness. Spring's renaissance ripened with rainbow flags fluttering valley porches. Pride events blooming in Missoula. Our float a hay wagon of homemade banners. Lila waving like mayor. Elias read from his chapbook on stage. Voice carrying to back rows. My pride swelling oceanic. Iris's baptism followed. Non-denominational waters. Our circle sponsors standing sentinel. Summer's solstice sealed serendipities. Adoption inquiry filed tentative, fostering first. A teen named Riley, city-shy but sharp, placed Summer's End, his bunkroom haven. Awkward at first. Elias's dad jokes landing flat, my garage tours tentative. But Lila's persistence won cracks, smiles emerging over Esmores. This is home, he'd ask, eyes wide at starfields, and we'd affirm, patient architects. Fall's foliage framed final flourishes. Elias's full manuscript submitted, title thaw lines, our rings engraved with dates. Cold storage dawn to now. Harvest dance accepted. Elias twirling me under lights. Valley eyes kind now. Acceptance earned. Winter's embrace, deep and knowing, led to the storage once more. He held me. Ringed hands linked, wilderness whispering eternals. Through betrayals braved, crises crested, healings harvested. Our story a human hymn. Love's light, undimmed by dark. The years folded like accordion bellows, expanding contractions of joy and quietude. The valley's cycles etching lines on our faces as surely as rings on trunks. Elias's silver threading fuller, my scar fading to whisper, Lila's limbs stretching toward teenhood's horizon. Riley settled roots tentative then tenacious, his city edges softening in creek swims and shop classes, Foster to forever sealed in courtrooms crisp with promise. Brothers, Lila declared at the barbecue crowning it, skewering marshmallows with ceremony, and we clinked bottles, the label family fitting looser, truer. Sarah and Theo's home burgeoned, Iris toddling after Owen's bossy lead. Their porch swings hosting spillover suppers where Jake's river romped with abandon, Tessa's second baking in Belly's curve. Dad's legacy lingered in heirlooms. A pocket knife passed to Elias, its blade honed for whittling Lila's first flute. And Jake's vigils at our hearth, stories of oilfield escapades blending with Elias's rodeo yarns, brotherhood burnished. Elias's thaw lines unfurled ripples, readings touring Montana's nooks, Helena halls, Billings bookstores. His voice a river carving canyons in listeners' guarded hearts. I tagged along when gears allowed, front row witness to applause's tide, pride a constant companion. A second manuscript brewed, this 1 hour's co-authored. Cabin Chronicles, Cold Storage Confessions, Love's Lexicon in prose. Our thaw, he called it, penning by dawn's light, my edits kisses on paper margins. Lila's adolescence dawned freckled with freedoms, school dances tentative, crushes confessed in cabin confabs. Elias's dad talks awkward but earnest, hearts wild, treat it kind. Her first love, a classmate named Jordan, sparked sleepovers supervised. Our rules firm but flexible, Sarah and I tag-teaming the talks. Riley mentored Shadow, his own queerness blooming quiet. A boyfriend from art club met over pancakes. Acceptance, our unspoken creed. Crisis crested soft in summer swelter. A drought parching wells. Valley farmers rallying rain dances and relief funds. Elias's trust board leading charges. We trucked water from town. Dust-caking skin. Lila and Riley hauling hoses like heroes. The break came in monsoon lashes, creeks swelling grateful, and victory bonfire blazed stories of resilience. Hands linked across flames. Fall's equinox equaled expansions. Lila's braces gleamed in school play spotlights, her Juliet fierce to Jordan's Romeo, Elias and I teary in wings. Riley's gallery show followed. Cityscapes inked with valley veins, sales funding college dreams. Holidays hypertrophied, tables groaning kin, Owen's recitals piano pure, Iris's twirls toddler tornado. Winter's wide-out whispered warnings anew. Elias's annual check flagged arrhythmia echoes. Meds adjusted, but sleep evaded, nightmares of freezes past. We hiked resolutions, snowshoes crunching mantras. Steady now. Therapy's tether held. Dr. Voss retired but recommended sage. Her sessions virtual vines. Intimacy innovated. Massages melting tensions. His mouth reverent on my scars. Mine tracing his tics' faithful rhythm. Spring's surge sprouted surprises. Adoption finalized for a sibling set. Twins Mia and Mateo, 3 and fierce. Crib hauled to loft, nights fragmented but full. Lila big-sistered bossy. Riley uncle in training. Elias's lullabies Spanish soft. My arms acheful. Sarah's clan mirrored. Third en route. Our shuttle symphony of minivans and milestones. Summer's Sabbath sanctified. Family campout in Bob Marshall. Tents taught under billion stars. Ghost stories ghosting giggles. Elias's guitar gospel to crickets. Love's landscapes lushened. His body against mine in sleeping bag hush. Slow and sacred. Rings warm talismans. Fall's frolic framed futures. Lila's homecoming court nod. Awkward in tiara. Jordan's corsage proud. Riley's scholarship to UM, art major bound. Elias's co-manuscript accepted. Launch at the cabin a constellation of locals. Readings rippling laughter and lumps. Crisis coda in November's nip. A cabin fire scare. Chimney spark leaping shingles. Jake's rig racing hoses. Valley volunteers quenching quick. Ashes aired regrets none. Rebuild rallying hands. New roof raised in days. Phoenix proud. Winter's vigil veered vital. Elias's health stabilized supreme. Dreams dormant. Our storage soiree solstice sealed. Hold eternal. Frost friends. Lila's first heartbreak healed in hot cocoa councils. Jordan's drift mended by time's tide. Spring's symphony swelled. Twins' firsts, steps, words, wonders. Woven into daily. Riley's gallery returnee, boyfriend Benji beaming. Sarah's quartet complete, boy Blaze bassinet bound. Summer's zenith zest. Road trip to Yellowstone. Geysers geysering gasps. Bison parades princely. Lodge nights loving languid. Fall's flourish flowered. Lila's license liberated. Driver's ed dreads dad dissolved. Book tour tandem. Towns toasting thaws. Winter's whisper waned to memory's melody. Years layered like snows, each flake facet of fortune. Betrayal's backstory. Crises chapters closed. Healing's hymns hummed. Deep in the wilderness, he held me still. Rings resonant. Family fractal. Love's legacy luminous. Human heart's highest art.